Hello everyone, it's Dylan from Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! Video. In today's video, we are going to be going over the top 10 WTF moments from the Toei Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, otherwise known as Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar with Season 0, it covers the events in an anime form that took place before Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, the anime that most of us are very familiar with. This series was never dubbed in English, so the only way you can watch it is through Japanese subtitles, and this was released, I believe, like 1999, over 2 decades ago now, so the quality is pretty bad, at least on most sites that you can find. The quality is actually really bad. There's no official release out there where you can watch this series, and there probably never will be. So as I show some of the pictures and video clips, just keep that in mind because they are going to be pretty grainy. But Season 0 is known very infamously for being much darker and much more just effed up than the normal Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, and that's because when Season 0 was occurring, the actual game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Was not really established. On the contrary, Yu-Gi-Oh! Was a bunch of different games that would be played that was not all revolving around the card game that we all know and love today. Now, I've done 2 similar videos to this. I did the top 10 darkest moments from the anime and the top 10 darkest moments from the manga, so if you're into these kind of videos, I'll have them linked down below. I do want to put a little bit of a warning in front of this video, which I never really do, but some of the concepts on this list are going to be a little intense, and so you know whether you like darker stuff or not, and if some stuff kind of disturbs you or you're disturbed by pretty intense stuff easily, then this video might not be for you. So I do want to put a little warning before we begin, but without further ado, let's get into it. The top 10 WTF moments from Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0. I hope you guys enjoy. Starting at number 10 is Mokuba's punishment game in episode 23. Now, I do want to say a lot of things on this list are going to be more conceptual than actual reality, because a lot of things are more so implied or could have happened rather than actually happening, and you'll see what I mean as this list goes on, but this is something that was in the process of happening. Mokuba, during the Death Tea arc, challenges Yugi to a game of Capsule Monster Chess. Yugi ends up winning this game, and Seto Kaiba, Mokuba's older brother, goes through with forcing Mokuba to partake in a penalty game where his soul will be devoured. Meaning, Seto Kaiba was perfectly okay with killing his younger brother. You can even see Mokuba start to get worried and even a little bit shocked that Seto was actually going to go through with it. And then once we see the penalty game begin, we see this horrifying monster begin to make its way towards Mokuba. And while this is happening, Seto is smiling and very content with allowing this demon to kill his younger brother. Yugi steps in and stops the whole thing from happening. But if you really want to see a much more twisted and just demented version of Seto, all you have to do is watch the Toei Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, and this was something that really did disturb me greatly when I watched it. Seto just has absolutely no empathy whatsoever for Mokuba. Coming in 9th, Zombies Attack Doctor, which takes place in episode 16. So in episode 16, Shizuka, or we know her as Serenity, Joey's younger sister, is being taken care of at a hospital for her illnesses. The doctor tries to make advances, inappropriate advances, on the nurse that works for him and is the direct nurse for Serenity. When she refuses his advances and Joey finds out about it, Joey obviously gets very angry, but what the doctor does is he fires Miyuki, the nurse that rejected his advances, and forces Joey to keep his mouth shut, because if he talks, Serenity will be kicked out of the hospital and will probably not survive what's going on with her illnesses. So Joey is in complete distress, can't do anything about it. Yami steps in, challenges this really scummy doctor to a penalty game, and after defeating him in golf, we see the door of darkness open, and these horrifying zombies come out from this door and start to attack the doctor. It is just something that I never expected when I was watching this episode, and the doctor is seen in a complete horrible state the next morning. I'm not sure if these zombies are supposed to represent the patients that may have passed away because of the doctor's mistreatment and mishandling of them. That makes this much darker and probably would shoot that up the list if it was the case. But just seeing these zombies come out and try and eat this doctor was definitely pretty crazy. So this comes in at number 9. Coming in 8, Ushio being consumed in episode 1. So the very first episode sees Yami Yugi take on Ushio, or as some of you might know him, Tetsu Trudge in the English dub, in a game where they are both climbing a tower. They have to pick up playing cards, not trading cards, but playing cards, you know, queen, jack, 10, spades, diamonds, clubs, all that stuff. And based on the value of the card they get, they are allowed to move up that many spaces on the rope until one of them reaches the top. Well, Ushio ends up getting defeated. He ends up cheating to get Yugi down from the top. He climbs to the top of the tower, only to see that there is not the money at the top that Yugi promised him, and this is obviously to symbolize the greed that he has. Ushio then falls off of the tower and looks like he is going to land comfortably in the water, but what happens next is absolutely disturbing. These 3 Mongolian deathworm-looking creatures rise from the ocean, and Ushio falls into one of their mouths, being consumed, as Yami Yugi says, by his own greed. But just the thought of this actually happening is greatly disturbing. I mean, they literally look like creatures from Skull Island. The next time we see Ushio, he is in a fetal position, completely crying on the floor, surrounded by his, I guess, gang members, if you will. It's truly a creepy sight to see. So Ushio being consumed comes in 8th for me. Number 7 is the amusement park terrorist in episode 14. This whole episode is just pretty bonkers. Anzu goes to a park, an amusement park, and she is riding a Ferris wheel that has carts 1 to 13 labeled, and that's important. The next thing we know is a terrorist attack occurs on the amusement park. All of the guests leave. Yami Yugi goes in to help the detectives solve the mystery. They have to release certain colored balloons that correspond with potential numbers on the actual Ferris wheel themselves, and if they release the wrong balloon, a bomb will go off containing an actual human being. So the fact that they legitimately had a full episode dedicated to a terrorist plot and stopping a terrorist plot is pretty insane for Yu-Gi-Oh! And this was an episode that always really stood out to me. Yami Yugi is able to figure out the floral clock corresponds with what the balloon colors are, and he's able to beat the terrorist by getting him to release a balloon and blow up the cart that he's in. The game of darkness that he plays with him is getting inside his mind and making him believe that there actually is a bomb in cart number 13. He ends up jumping from the cart, where he is promptly arrested. The whole concept of this episode to me was always pretty WTF. They literally did an entire episode focused on a terrorist attack. Thank God no one died, but this does come in at number 7 on this list. Up next is the lever game as part of Death Tea in episode 22. So Death Tea, as we know, was this obstacle course that Seto Kaiba designed for Yugi, with the end goal to basically kill him and all of his friends. And while the really messed up stuff about Death Tea was removed from the Season 0 anime, that's right, there was stuff in the manga that even Season 0 said, yeah, we're not going to incorporate that. Chopman is one that comes to mind. There was a lever game, which I'm sure most of you remember, where Anzu, Miho, Honda, and Jinochi all have to pull down and hold levers that require a lot of physical strength. If they release the levers, they will be physically crushed by a machine that is known as blood. And even though it's not confirmed that this machine or this contraption killed people, the way that Seto describes it to Yugi and his friends makes me think that they are probably not the first ones that have come face to face with this machine, and the people that have probably come face to face with this machine in the past probably have been crushed to death by it. Yugi is able to figure out that Anzu is the one that needs to release her lever, saving all of them from being brutally crushed and grinded by this machine. And again, this is one of those things where the concept is a little more disturbing than what actually happened, because luckily the day was saved by Yugi and his brain, but definitely a disturbing thing to imagine, and something that very well could have happened to this gang. Making the top 5 is the tiger eating Anzu in episode 17. No, you did not hear that wrong. This is another concept over reality thing. Yugi ends up playing against one of Kaiba's game masters named Eileen Rao, and they play a game of Raijanhai. I've probably completely butchered that name. Every time Yugi loses a piece, the door that is containing a vicious tiger will slightly open, and if the tiger is able to get out, it is basically confirmed that it will attack and maim and kill Anzu and ultimately eat her in front of Yugi. So the stakes for this are absolutely ridiculous, and the tiger is pretty close to being released right before Yugi is able to get the upper hand on Eileen and eventually defeat her. Again, the thought of a tiger mauling and eating a helpless human being, pretty disturbing, and it comes in at number 5 for me. Coming in 4th is the clock punishment in episode 4. Maybe this is just me, but this was a punishment that always really disturbed me. Yugi ends up going after a thief, and they end up playing a penalty game. I'm sure many of you remember this game where the pendulum is swinging. They have to click on the stopwatch, and whoever gets closest to 0 from a countdown of 10 is the winner. Eventually, the guy loses. He starts to attack Yugi, and then Yugi turns him into, I guess, a living clock. You start seeing watches protrude from this guy's skin on his forearm, and eventually his eyes turn into a clock as well. You can hear him screaming as he most likely just goes absolutely insane. I have no idea if this is a permanent punishment or not, but it is something that has always, for whatever reason, deeply disturbed me. I don't know why, but I feel like this is a very brutal punishment for a character that definitely deserved to be punished, but I feel like some of the worst characters got off with easier punishments, which we're gonna get to that later. So again, this might just be a personal thing. I mean, you're seeing the clips now, but this is something that always disturbed me, combined with the guys screaming and just the slow mutation of the skin and the eyes, and I don't know. Not for me, man. Definitely a messed up moment, in my opinion. Taking the bronze is the death of Kanekura, which occurs in episode 5. So Kanekura is another guy not a lot of people are going to feel bad for. Greedy, selfish, rotten, just a really horrible person. He borrowed the Millennium Puzzle for a day, although his actual plans were to sell the puzzle to a high-profile buyer. Unfortunately for him, Shadi pays him a visit and plays a bit of a penalty game with him where he asks him questions, and based on the truth of his answers, the scale will lean one way or another. He's obviously lying the entire time to Shadi, as symbolized by the scales, and before the final question is asked, the chair that he is sitting on turns into Amit, which is this horrific, nightmare-inducing creature. And as the final question is asked, you can see Amit's claws slowly start to rip into the chest of Kanekura, and Amit then bites down on the head of Kanekura as he's literally ripping out his entire, chest and stomach. It's a very disturbing scene, and yes, I think we can all agree Kanekura, a scummy guy. A lot of people in early Season 0, scummy people, but as I was watching, I was like, Jesus Christ, this is just, this is something. So, Kanekura's death is going to be number 3 for me on this list. The runner-up is actually something from the second episode, a pretty famous scene, which is the fire gun death of Gyro. So Gyro escapes from prison earlier in the episode and ends up holding up a diner that Yugi and his friends happen to be at. He takes Anzu as hostage, blindfolds her, and forces her to sit next to him at a booth while holding her at gunpoint. Yugi ends up challenging him to a game where they choose one finger and can only use that one finger for the duration of the game. Eventually, Yugi outsmarts Gyro by putting a lighter on the gun, meaning if Gyro moves his hand to grab the lighter, he'll be moving his finger, and if he pulls the trigger, the recoil will force the lighter to fall into his lap, which will ignite the vodka that has been pouring off the table since the game started. Yugi ends up winning when Gyro just grabs the lighter and disregards the rule and forces Gyro to imagine himself on fire. Now, in the actual manga, Gyro is legitimately on fire. He literally burns to death. So Season 0 did hold this one back a little bit. They did censor this a little bit. But even the thought of being on fire eternally and constantly feeling that burning sensation and that pain, assuming this is something that might just last forever until he goes insane in the context of Season 0, is still something that is greatly horrible to think about and painful to think about. I always feel like drowning and burning are just two of the most horrific ways to die, and so even though he's not actually dying, feeling the sensation is probably just as bad, if not worse. And so Gyro's penalty game comes in at the runner-up spot on this list. A quick honorable mention before I get to number 1, the gun shootout, which also takes place in Death T, something that was pretty heavily censored in the Season 0 anime. I'm pretty sure in the manga, the team that is hunting down Yugi are using real guns to try and kill them, but in the anime, they are just using these stun guns, which will knock them unconscious. The censorship there did knock this just out of the top 10 for me, but they're on the thumbnail. Thumbnail, by the way, beautiful. Shout out to my thumbnail creator, Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s, for making this. But yeah, the gun shootout for me is an honorable mention. The most what the F moment in Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0 has to be the Anzu chloroform. You know what was going to happen at the hands of Kokorano. This is something that did not actually happen, thank God. And I know this can be a tough topic for a lot of people to talk about, but this does take place in episode 13 of Season 0. Kokorano is a character who pretends to be a psychic at Domino High School. He gives Anzu a fortune that she will fall deeply in love with a man in the near future. He decides then to follow Anzu and ends up smothering her with chloroform after class. She passes out, and Kokorano states that he's able to do whatever he wants with her, which again, we're not going to get into extreme detail there, but just the concept of what was going to happen and what would have happened is really just, oh my god, like it really is disturbing to me. Thank God that Yugi comes to Anzu's rescue. He challenges Kokorano to a penalty game. This is a character that deserved a much harsher punishment. The only thing that happens to Kokorano is that he passes out from his own chloroform. That's it. Definitely deserved way more of a punishment here, but just thank God Yugi barged in before anything happened. The implication here is, to me, horrific and one of the most disturbing things in the manga. I think this was number 6 for darkest manga moments, and the biggest WTF moment that Season 0 ever did. But again, this kind of stuff, the more sexual abuse, is much more disturbing for me than death is for whatever reason. So because of that, that might just be a personal choice to put it this high, but Kokorano almost doing what he did to Anzu, to me, is the darkest and most disturbing thing that has ever occurred in Season 0. And that about wraps it up. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you love these dark moment videos, I have one on the manga and I have one on the anime. They'll both be linked down below. If you want to know my thoughts on Season 0 as a whole, I did a full review on Season 0. That video will be linked down below as well. But guys, thank you all so much for watching. Please let me know if you feel I missed any that would definitely make your top 10. Let me know for you what the most disturbing part of Season 0 was, maybe the most disturbing penalty game, the most disturbing implication. I am really excited to hear your thoughts on this topic. And a special thank you to my Platinum tier patrons, Horace May, Goosey Q, Panther J, Blue Maiden 28, Jarrett Bueller, Xslayer64, Brandon Gomez, and Tenjo Kogami Zaizen, and to my Diamond tier patrons, Jesse Wood, Latrell Smith, and Anime Kaput, and to my Egyptian God tier patron, XZ's Lover 104. Thank you so much to everyone who supports me on Patreon, and to everyone who is a YouTube channel member. You guys help me out tremendously. I stream over on Twitch. I also have an Instagram. They will both be linked down below. Make sure to follow me on all of those platforms if you're interested, of course. And thank you so much for all the recent support. We just passed 75,000 subs. That is an insane milestone that I really never dreamed we would reach. So the Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything journey has continued to be amazing because of each and every one of you, and I look forward to seeing where the future brings us. Again, thank you so much for watching. I will talk to you down below, and I hope you have an amazing day.
Why can't you see that I'm speaking with sincerity? And I think you should make a lot more money, 'cause it's what's best.